Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend a few minutes with us this afternoon for this webinar. My name is Sherry Zimmerman, and I'm with DWD Technology Group. We're a Sage 100 partner located in Indiana. We provide support services to companies using Sage 100 throughout the Midwest. And we're always trying to find ways for Sage 100 users to be more efficient and get the most out of their software system. So before we start the webinar, I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping notes. Because of the number of people on the webinar today, we're going to have everyone muted. We will stop multiple times throughout the webinar to open things up for questions. You can use your chat box to type in a question, and we'll go ahead and read that out to the group. Or if you look at the little box, the admin panel of your GoToWebinar screen, you'll see a little hand. You can click on that, and that's essentially raising your hand saying that you have a question. When you do that, we can go ahead and unmute your line so you can verbally ask the question so the group can hear it. And again, we'll be stopping multiple times throughout the presentation. Today, Tina Fan with Beanworks, she's going to show us how AP automation can help transform your accounts payable processes. So go ahead, Tina, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. As Sherry mentioned, we will be talking about how AP automation is transforming the back office. And that's my name there up on the screen. I'm one of the account executives here at Sage AP Automation, also known as Beanworks. And I'll be walking you through the presentation and the demo portion. So let's get into the webinar. And today we're going to talk about manual AP, what that typical process looks like, what the research says, the benefits of AP automation. We'll jump into a product demonstration, and then of course we'll go through a question and answer period. And as Sherry mentioned, we'll also take some breaks in between to see if there are any questions we could assist right away. All right, so no matter what level you are within the AP team, manual AP processes can affect you in your role. So for our CFOs and head of finance, as well as the controllers, the challenges stem around visibility and reporting an AP across multi-entities, and even visibility in workflows and approvals. So it's hard to see if you have any bottlenecks kind of holding up the process. For our AP clerks, there's lots of time spent on data entry, on follow-up of whether or not their managers have approved invoices or not, and just typically seeing where things are and shuffling paper around. Now, to begin and kick off the webinar, let's just start off with a quick poll here to understand who we've got online. So we'll launch a poll here to get a better understanding of what your role is online today. All right, and we really do appreciate your participation. If you could take a quick second or two to fill that out. Great. Awesome. So it looks like we've got 50% of everyone online today. You're a CFO or VP or a finance leader. We've got some AP clerks on. Awesome. Welcome. So 33%. And then we've got managers and our AP our controllers. So it looks like we've got a little bit of everyone online today. So that's great. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully all of this information that we'll be sharing with you will really speak to yourself and your role in the organization. All right, so now let's kick it off and take a look at what the research says. So last year, we partnered with Level Research, who did an in-depth study on AP processes across different organization sizes. what they found was that most large enterprises have caught on to this reality and already have some level of AP automation, while small to medium-sized enterprises or companies with less than $100 million in revenue still have very manual workflow. Now, why might that be the case? Well, historically, these tools have only been available for large enterprises because there was more need for automation with organizations processing a high volume of invoices. The lack of tools available for small to medium-sized enterprises left them with limited options, and that meant often patching different tools together combined with paper, filing cabinets, and manual follow-ups. Now, based on that research, we have focused our efforts on helping small to medium-sized enterprises achieve the same results as enterprise-level organizations. So diving into the results, you can see that the lion's share of issues related to AP stem from the amount of time each process takes. Data entry and the manual routing of invoices are the primary concern of almost everyone related to the AP function, as you'll see the top 2 points here on the screen. So 79% of these participants in the survey indicated that manual data entry and inefficient processes was definitely a huge challenge here. Second, coming in with manual routing of invoices for approval. So again, this could be in various different ways, whether you're getting emailed approvals and having to continue a follow-up via email, or perhaps you're printing out paper, dropping it off at the manager's desk and waiting for that paperwork to somehow maneuver back to you. Another challenge indicated was lost or missing invoices. So not really having a record of tracking invoices, what's come in already and what you've seen. And you'll notice various different points there up on the screen as well. Now, we didn't just stop here with Level Research's findings. We also did our own studies with over 200 AP teams to find where they were spending their time. And guess what the data said? Well, over 57% of the average AP person's time is spent on data entry, and another 19.3% was spent managing approvals. So this made our goal clear. Free up the time in those categories, and we would significantly improve the lives of everyone related to AP. Now, let's compare some of your thoughts to the research here. So we're going to launch our second poll now. And if you could please indicate what's your top pain point. Perfect, seeing some results coming in. Thank you so much for taking that time. All right, and we'll launch the results in a second here. Perfect, so let's see what we've got. All right, so there you have it. You can see from the results here today as well. The top two were indicated as manual data entry, so 38% of you indicated that, as well as another 38% indicated that manual invoice and approval process. So again, that goes hand in hand with the research conducted by Level, the research conducted by our team, and what we're seeing in the audience today. Perfect. Thank you so much for doing that. And as we go through the demonstration today, hopefully I'll be able to show you how we can help decrease those numbers. All right, so how many different ways could an AP professional look into solving these challenges? So some of the challenges that we've mentioned in the previous slide. Well, there are a few different categories of software that tackle the problems related to AP. Now, this includes document management. However, if time is a concern, you may want to steer clear of this because solutions can take up to a year to implement for something as large as a document management system. Another software is, just data entry software. However, with this solution, it leaves you in need of a workflow solution. So we'll cover the manual data entry, but what about the approval process management? It kind of leaves you hanging there. So the third option is, of course, an AP automation system. And this is really only helpful for all things AP. Now, so for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to focus on making the case for AP automation. So AP automation will eliminate repetitive tasks. So no more scanning, printing, and emailing invoices. This will all be automated instead. You'll be given real-time data. So see your data when you need to see it at any point in time, run reports. You'll have access to all of that. Procure to pay. So manage your payments in the same system. With Sage AP Automation, you get unlimited seats. All of your data is one place, and that includes multi-entities if you do have different companies. And being a SaaS cloud solution, you can access it securely from anywhere. Now you can have a complete AP system that frees you up to make real-time decisions and do what you really want or need to focus on in your role. Once an organization adopts Sage AP Automation, we typically see 83% reductions in just data entry alone, 95% of reductions in the time spent managing approvals, and significant reductions in the number of vendor and internal inquiries related to the state of payments, making the lives of all AP teams easier. So you'll see on the screen there for our CFO and finance directors now, you'll have full visibility compared to, before AP automation where you'd have to individually search for everything. Perhaps it's through paper, perhaps it's online. For our controllers and AP managers, having full visibility in potential bottlenecks now. Who's holding up the system? Where are the approvals sitting? And for our AP clerks, reducing your time spent on data entry, having approvals in one place, and easily locating any invoice. So it turns out that the research bears similar findings, and they found automated teams had significantly reduced their paper invoice volume, approvals of invoices, and improved visibility of unpaid invoices also improved. So those top two are huge, especially if you do want to move to more of an automated solution. You'll typically find that you'll be moving from paper-based processes to an online system. So here at Sage AP Automation, we're here to help make accounting teams more productive. We believe accountants should be freed from manual tasks. No one on this call went to school to do data entry all day. We also believe accountants should be empowered with real-time data to make the best decisions. Now, don't just take my word for it. We're now going to show you how the Sage AP automation system works. So without further ado, I'll quickly jump over to the demo instance there, and hopefully that logs or shows up on your screen. And before getting into the nitty-gritty details of the software, I'll quickly go over the user experience and user-based permissions, so it's easier for you to follow along as we go through the demo. So right now, I'm currently in the Invoice module in progress. You'll notice that we've got 3 modules in total: purchase orders, invoices, and payments. And at the top of the screen, this is where you'll see the workflow, which flows from left to right, and also from top down. In the middle of the screen here, this is what we call the workspace. So because I'm in the invoice module in progress, essentially these are invoices that are waiting to be completely coded before they're submitted for approval. On the left-hand side, there are a couple different things here. So first, you'll be able to create custom filters. If you ever want to run specific reports or search up, specific invoices, you can create filters here based on any criteria and essentially highlight the filter, and our system will pull invoices that match your filter. Below that, we've also got status filters. So if you'd like to run reports or search for information based on the status of that invoice, whether that means it's in progress, perhaps it's waiting for approval, whatever it is, you'll be able to define it here. And below that, you'll see we've got the organizational structure. So in my case, Green Bean Country Club is my parent company. I've got Green Bean Co. as a legal entity. Below that, within this entity, I've broken it down by department, and you'll notice that I have further companies, further segmentation, and so forth. So we can really mirror this section here so it matches what's set up in your current organizational structure as well. Whether that's broken out by departments like this, however it's segmented, we'll be able to mirror. And in Sage AP Automation, we allow for unlimited user access at no additional charge. So what's neat about that is you can really define on a per user basis what each individual can see, what they can do, and what they have access to in the software. So for example, I'm in the sales department, and let's say I don't necessarily need to see the activity from the other departments. So on my settings, essentially, you could define it so when I log in, I'll only see the sales bubble highlighted and the work that pertains to me. The same applies to the top, where if you'll have users come into the system who may only have a role in approving invoices, and they don't necessarily have a role in coding or processing, we can hide these tabs. So when those users come in, they'll just see the approvals tab and the work that they need to complete, making it nice and clean for them. Now you'll notice here as I navigate to the other modules, let's say purchase orders or even payments, everything in terms of the layout stays exactly the same. And the only thing that really changed was the color of the module. So we've designed the system this way on purpose to make training fast and easy. Once you've learned one of our modules, you'll have a really good understanding of how the rest of the system works. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And for today's purpose, I'll begin in the purchase order module. Now, I completely understand that this purchase orders may not be involved in your current process. I do want to make it clear that it is optional. You're not required to use this module, but for the purpose of today's demo, just to tie everything together, we'll go through purchase orders, invoices, and payments. So let's start here. All right, so at the create level, this is where you'll come in, and again, you can grant users access to come in to create a purchase requisition. Maybe they're out on the field working all day, they can simply, as long as they have a internet access, they can create one of these. You'll first start by selecting the company or the entity it's for, if you have multi-entities. You'll fill out the vendor, the account list perhaps, and you'll notice that all of these lists you see within our software, they'll be pulled directly from your current Sage 100 setup. So the vendor list will be exactly the same, the account list will be exactly the same, and so on. With the wildcard search, you'll be able to type in a word from the string, and we'll be able to pull it up quickly so you can code it as so, fill in all the details as you know, and essentially you have two options at this point. You could save this purchase requisition if you wanted to come back and work on it later. And if you click save, essentially you'll find them in the in progress tab here. Or if you filled out all the details and you're ready to go, you can go ahead and submit it for approval. Now, by submitting for approval, this will trigger an automatic email to the users that we'll define in our settings in terms of who's going to approve. And they'll receive a notification. They'll come into the system at the Approvals tab, and they can either select all of the purchase orders to or approve or reject as a batch, or you could jump into that specific purchase order, view the details, and approve or reject from this screen. Now, if you are going to reject anything in our system, you will be required to leave a comment, and all comments will be logged with the purchase order as well. So essentially, they'll be logged here and it'll be sent back to the individual who submitted it for approval. Now, once approved, purchase orders will then move on over to the Committed tab. And as our system automatically matches purchase orders and invoices together, which I'll show you more when we get into the Invoice module, you'll be able to see how much has been drawn from that PO already, how much is remaining, the totals, and so forth. And until purchase orders have been fully committed and closed is when they'll move on over to the next tab, which is the Close tab. So all purchase orders that have gone through our workflow in our system will live here within Sage AP Automation. And again, if you need to run specific reports, look for any specific information, you can do so by creating the custom filters, status filters, or using the global search and running a report that way. So that wraps up the purchase order portion of the software. So we'll take a quick pause here if there are any questions regarding anything that I've covered so far.
So if you have a question, please use the chat box, or you can click on the hand in the GoToWebinar admin box and raise your hand, and we'll unmute your line to ask your question. I don't see any questions at this time.
Okay, no worries. We'll continue on then, and we'll jump into the Invoice module. So this is really the bread and butter of our entire software. Invoices, hopefully automating this section is one of the key reasons you're online today. And we'll jump into the first tab, which is the Create. And so the Create tab essentially is how you'll get your paper-based invoices into the system. So if you're still receiving invoices by mail, perhaps they're being dropped off in person, all you'll have to do to get them into AP Automation is batch scan all of those papers together. Whether you have a stack of 10 pages, 20 pages, however many it is, you can simply just drag and drop the file here. Don't worry about separating them with blank pages or anything like that. You'll then see all of those pages appear in our system as a digital copy. Now, to quickly separate these pages, it's a click of a button. And if you have any multi-paged invoices, simply just drag and drop to organize. So now you'll see I've got one invoice with 1 page, another with 3, third with 2, and so on and so forth. Once it's organized, you'd click Save, Create Invoices, and all of these will then move on over to the next tab, which is In Progress. Now, for invoices that you may be receiving electronically, you'll be given a Sage AP Automation email address, which you can start sharing to your vendors, or if you currently have an existing, AP inbox set up already, we can just set up some auto forwarding rules to essentially pull in the invoices from your current inbox over to ours, which will then feed automatically into our system. And so the electronic invoices will skip the Create tab, but you'll be able to see them directly in progress here. The third way to get invoices into the system is we do also have a mobile app. So if you'd like to take a photo, maybe you're on the go, take a photo of it, and it will also upload into our system here. Now, as long as you've done one of the 3 methods that I've mentioned to get an invoice into the system, by the end of your business day, you'll be able to see the invoice appear in our system by the next morning with some of the information already captured for you. So if I jump into the In Progress tab, and let's jump into an example here. So what's included as part of our auto capture service will be the vendor, the date, the due date, as well as the subtotals, totals, and taxes. So all that's left for you to complete will be the line item details, but there are a few different ways we can also help accommodate this. Now, the first way is, as I mentioned earlier, our system will identify if you've got any POs and invoices that match. In this case, I've located one here, and you can actually view the PO and invoice side by side. To quickly complete the coding for the invoice, all you've got to do is click PO Adoption, and our system will pull off the coding that you've already applied on the purchase order and apply it here on the invoice level. So it's a click of a button, it's done, and you can now submit it for approval. Now, again, if you're not using purchase orders, that is completely fine as well. No pressure there to use that module if it's not included in your workflow already. We do also have another feature called Smart Code. And Smart Code works the best when you have invoices that will be typically coded the same way based on vendor. So all you'll have to do is click Smart Code, and our system will automatically populate the line item details for you based on the last way you've coded it. So for example, every time I receive this Fortis bill, I know that I'll be coding it to 5760. Maybe my totals will be a little different month to month, but typically the account will be exactly the same. And so if that's the case, click Smart Code and we'll fill the details for you. Now, once it's coded, submit for approval. Oh, and the last way I forgot to mention is if those two options don't apply, again, these lists that you're seeing here will be pulled directly from Sage. So hopefully with a wildcard, you can just simply type in a word from the string or a number from the string to quickly code it. Now again, once you click Submit for Approval, that triggers an automated email notification to your users. They'll come to this screen here again. It looks exactly the same as we've seen earlier, where you can approve or reject as a batch, or jump into it to approve and reject from the detailed view. And how about now we jump into the settings to show you exactly how we can set up the approval channels. So you can set up different approval channels for each of our modules. And I've just got more set up in invoices right now, so let's quickly walk through those. So you'll see right now that global rules is indicated here as my legal entity, just meaning that these channels I've set up will apply to all of my companies across the board. But of course, you can have a specific channel or specific channels for each company. And I'll jump into this example just to show you how detailed we can really be in terms of setting up the approval channels and the logic for routing. So let's open up this one. Now you'll see that I've got 4 different boxes here, and each of these boxes indicates a new set of rules. So in my general box, this is really a dollar value. So if you have any approval channels that are defined by dollar values, perhaps certain users have a certain dollar threshold, you'll be able to use this general rule here. I've pulled in, for this example, an org unit. So if you wanted to specify by departments, we can do so. Perhaps you wanted to specify by account or vendor, we can also do that. Essentially, we'll be able to create any approval channels based on any standard list within your software. Now, in terms of who's approving, I'll click into this icon here. And you'll see right now I've just got Beansprout. So essentially, Beansprout is approving everything that fits the criteria that we've defined. But let's say I want to add a few more users to this channel. You can simply drag and drop to organize the order of who will approve. So what it's saying now is that Beansprout will first approve, Jack will go second, and then once Jack is done, it'll be routed to Jill, and Jill will do the final stamp of approval. So this is in sequential order using the AND logic. Now, we can also accommodate the OR logic, meaning that I can actually group users together. And let's say they both have the same level of signing authority. You can group them together, and what happens is they'll both receive the email notification. Whoever approves it first will complete the channel. So you'll see that you can create highly detailed channels, make it as complex or as simple as you'd like, and you can create an unlimited amount of approvals for each of our modules. Now let's jump back into the invoice module now after just jumping into the settings there. And what happens after invoices have been approved is they'll come on over to the export tab. So you'll know that they're good to go and they're all approved with these big A bubbles here. And this is your final last look at the invoices before actually exporting the data into Sage. Once you've determined that you're ready and it's good to go, select them all, go to Actions and export the data. And all of this information, so all of the fields, all the coding, will sync on over to Sage 100, and it will appear as if you've manually coded it yourself. Now, once you've exported it from this tab here, it'll then move on over to Archived. And Archived is now going to be your online filing cabinet. So if you're currently shuffling paper, you're currently, printing everything out and putting them in actual filing cabinets, maybe categorizing them by vendor, by date, or however it is, you'll be happy to know that everything now lives in our system here, and we will store all of your invoices for at least 7 years. So if you've ever got to go through audits, any type of, reporting, you can do so all here in this platform. Now again, at this stage or at any stage, you have the access to the filters. And I'll quickly show you an example of what a report looks like. And let's just run it on my archived invoices here. And I'll do so with a PDF. You can create a CSV, but PDF will actually show you the images, so the invoice images and so forth. And it just takes a few seconds to download onto my computer here. And let's open that up. So on the first page, you'll always get a high-level summary of the invoices you've just ran. So in this case, you can see where they were coded to, the dates, the totals, and so forth. And let's say I wanted to view invoice 13 in more detail. You don't actually have to scroll all the way down. You can actually just click on the number. So it's hyperlinked, and it will then take you directly to the page within the report. So here you can see the invoice image, the header information, line item details, and then you've also got your entire approval or audit trail. So you can see who approved on which date, as well as if any comments were left during this trail. Additionally, if this invoice had a purchase order or any type of backup document associated to it, you can scroll down and you'll be able to see that directly below the invoice as well. So we've definitely had clients, create these massive reports and email them off to their auditors if that's a process you have to go through. Or we've also had clients give their auditors read-only access to come into the software themselves and kind of do their own searching and digging. All right, so that wraps up the invoice module there. And how about we take a quick minute or two here to see if we've got any questions.
Okay, so as a reminder, please use the chat box to enter your question or go ahead and raise your hand. I'm not seeing any questions at this time.
Okay, no worries. Hopefully everything is as clear as it can be. Great, let's continue on. And our last module for today is our payments module. And similar to the purchase order module, this is not required, so you don't have to use us for payments, but is definitely an option if you'd like a full automated solution. So let's jump into there. And so what happens after you've exported the invoices is they will flow down over to our Payments Create tab. You'll see here you've got your aged payables list, and we've grouped your invoices based on vendor. I can quickly just click on this icon here to see exactly which invoices they are and start selecting which ones I'm ready to pay. You'll notice my selected and outstanding total below here, Once I'm happy with the selection, click Create Payments, and these will then push on over to the In Progress stage. Here at the In Progress stage, this is where you'll be able to define how you'd like to pay the invoice as well as which bank account you'd like to pay it out of. So with our integration, we can integrate with any Canadian and US bank account. And the different payment methods that we offer include checks, meaning that we'll actually print out and mail out the checks for you. We can do ACH transactions. We've got an e-check option as well as our own virtual credit card payment method. So again, at this section, let's just jump into an example here. You'll define how you'd like to pay the invoice as well as which bank it's coming out of, whether you have multi-banks or not. Once the details are completed, it is ready now to be submitted for approval. And again, the approval channels can completely be different from your invoice channels, however you define that in the settings. And this approvals page looks exactly the same as we've seen now and hopefully we're familiar with, where you can jump into it to view the details or select them as a batch to approve or reject from this screen. Once you've approved all of your payments, they'll move on over to the Releases tab. Now, the Releases tab, the way that I like to typically describe it is, think of it as your weekly or bi-weekly check run, where you'll have all of your approved payments ready to go. And now you can select them on a weekly or however bi-weekly basis. And essentially when you click Release Payments, that's when you're telling us here at Sage ERP Automation that you're ready for us to actually mail out and send out a check for you, or perhaps initiate the ACH transaction. Now, once you've done so, once you've released it, you'll be able to see your payment information here on the next tab. So the Paid tab here is going to be exactly the same as we've seen in the Export tab, where you'll have this information and data that you can then export over to Sage 100. Lastly, Archived, we've seen this earlier, where you'll have all of the information and history regarding that particular payment. And then Report allows you for further reporting functionality in our system. Now, I just want to take us back a step here and explain to you, if you don't use this for payments, that's completely fine, as we do have a bilateral sync with Sage 100. If you make payments within Sage right now, you cut checks out of Sage, keep the payment process exactly the same as you are doing it today, and perhaps you're only using us for the Invoice Module, we'll actually be able to reflect the data in our system. So if I jump back up a little bit here, you'll see that some of these invoices that have already been completed in the Invoice Module, they've got these little cash icons next to them. So this means that you've already paid this invoice out of your system, so out of Sage. And it'll actually reference the check number, the total amount, and so forth here in our system. So what's unique about our payments module is that you definitely have the option to run all payments through there. You have the option to run some, and you can completely just not use this at all. So very flexible there in terms of payments, as either way, all of the data will live here in the system or will be available here for you. So that wraps up the entire software. We've gone through payments and all of the system. So if there are any questions regarding anything that you've seen or anything I can help clarify, please let me know.
Okay, we do have a couple questions.
Perfect.
The first question is, what if we want to cut the checks and make ACH payments ourselves?
Yep, exactly. No problems there. So if you'd like to keep it in-house, make ACH payments and check payments exactly the same as you're doing right now, that is completely fine. You do not have to use our payments module at all. Again, as long as you've completed the payment in Sage and you've marked it as paid in Sage, that data will still be reflected here. But how that would work is, after you've exported the data from our system into Sage, that's where you'll be able to resume and make ACH or check payments through your current workflow.
Okay. Another question. Will the PO module work for a manufacturing environment where packing lists are matched to the PO?
That's a great question. So that it does require a little bit more understanding of your workflow, but the short answer is if you're currently, using Sage's purchase order module and you're doing your receivings in Sage's module as well, we'll be able to pull that data into our software, and essentially it'll appear here in the committed tab. So the only way we can really accommodate your manufacturing and matching of inventory or receivings as well as purchase order and invoices is if you're currently using the PO module and doing your receivings within Sage, in which we'll be able to pull over that data to continue the invoice match in our system. So that's a little bit more technical. Hopefully that makes sense. Otherwise, again, please let us know and we can hop on a call and take this offline.
Okay, we had another question around, do we have to do the POs through this module in order for this to work?
Nope, so definitely not. The only reason that I went through POs today is if you'd like to see the entire solution as a total. Otherwise, if you do not currently use POs, by no means does that mean you have to start using it, so no.
Okay. How does this, here's another question. How does this work with two companies in the same business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do specialize in multi-entities. So if you've got two companies or two businesses, again, we'll define that on your org structure here. And you can define which users, belong to which companies. So when those specific users log in, they'll just see, the company that they belong to. But on your role, if you perhaps want an overview of all companies and all the activity, we can definitely grant you that access as well.
Okay, a couple more questions. What should we do with the packing slip paperwork that we receive?
So this one kind of goes back to the previous question. So if you're doing receivings within Sage and doing that with the PO module within Sage, you don't necessarily need to keep the documentation, as the data will flow through our system and be stored here. But if you would like to actually hang on to the packing slip and see that as a visual and have it stored in our system, you do also have the option, if I jump back into the PO module here and show you, to add up any backup pages. So if you'd like to add your receivings, maybe document as a backup to the purchase order, you can do that at any point and it will display directly below.
Okay, so we have one person that has their hand raised. Dodie, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, and then you can ask your question. All right, so your line is unmuted, Dodie. You can go ahead and ask your question. If you happen to have yourself muted, because we cannot hear you right now, if you happen to have yourself muted, go ahead and unmute yourself. Or if you want to enter your question in the chat box, that could work too. We have a question about the cost of AP automation.
Yep, sure. So I don't have that as part of the presentation today, only because for each and every one, it is going to be a little bit different. But I'll explain to you how our pricing package works. So we've got a one-time setup fee. there are two parts to our monthly plans. And so the first part is going to be based on the access of the software. So which modules you're interested in using, how many companies you have in mind to bring on board, as well as the level of support that you'd like from our team. So that determines a specific plan, and that's a monthly fee, just based on some of those criteria. The second portion of our monthly fee is based now on your invoice volume. So if you're doing 100 invoices per month, or maybe you're doing 500, we have different tiers for each of those invoice counts. So that's another depending factor. But essentially the plan is part 1 of the monthly. The invoice tier is part 2 of the monthly. And then if you're interested in any of the payment transactions, again, that's very flexible where you can do some with us, some not, none at all. So in terms of our payments piece, that will just be based on the number of transactions. So the number of checks that you'll be running through our system, or the number of ACH, for example. So if you'd like to get a specific quote for your organization, I highly recommend to reach out to Sherry. Maybe let us know that you're interested, and we can take that conversation offline to really cater it to your organization.
Yes, we did have a couple other questions. Somebody was asking if this webinar was recorded. It is recorded, and everyone will get a link to the recording following the webinar. That should be tomorrow or Thursday. You'll get an email with a link to the recorded webinar. Also, if you do have additional questions or would like specific pricing information, feel free to contact either Tina. She has her contact information on the screen right now, or Con Skimbos with DWD. He's the one that actually is going to send you the email with the recording link. He can provide you with additional information and pricing as well. We have one more person asking about technical questions, and whether it's pricing or questions about the actual solution or technical questions, those can all be run through Cons, and Cons will work with Tina and her team to get everything answered, that all the questions that you guys might have. All right, I think that is the end of the questions for now. Let me check one more time to make sure nobody has their hands raised. Thanks, a big thank you to everyone for taking time out to attend our webinar this afternoon. And also thank you, Tina, for presenting this information.
Awesome, thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, well, we will go ahead and close this out. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, bye now.